Hello dear colleagues and welcome to the Didactic Laboratory. My name is Feka and this channel it's for us who are interested in pedagogical research, how I as an upper secondary English teacher work, and this video will specifically be looking into what's known as spaced learning, a strategy evidence-based on how to improve learning retention. In the video we will begin with a brief discussion about the background related to this and then into the actual method itself, and then finally I'll show you some pedagogical considerations how to use this in your classroom and how I do it. Welcome everyone. If you are like me, you might have been participating in lectures where you felt that the teacher drones on and it's really troublesome to keep focus, and you're not alone. This happens to me quite often and I can see the same thing happening at school as well. I can recall quite fondly how this was something that we all experienced during our teaching training program, where we would think that, is this really the best way to teach our students? And interestingly enough, we didn't really think too much of it later and just simply used this method ourselves. And when I began teaching, I often fell into the same sort of pitfall where I myself would hold long lectures and I would see my students inevitably sort of slump in their seats, and I would really ask myself, am I actually giving these students the best opportunity to learn? And interestingly enough, there has been quite a bit of research being made lately related to cognition and how that works in the classroom, especially when it comes to learning and learning retention. Now, today I'm going to introduce something known as spaced learning, but initially let's look at the image that we see here right now. We can see what's known as massed practice, something that we're quite familiar with. I took the amount of time that I usually have for a lesson, which is 80 minutes, where it's not that uncommon for a teacher to be holding a lecture, let's say some 60 minutes, and then have some sort of exercise at the end. Now that's definitely the best alternative. It's not too uncommon that you would listen to a lecture. This happens quite a lot at university, where you're then simply just given the exercise afterward as some sort of homework or something of the like. Now, on the other hand, what we have below here is a visualization of what's known as spaced learning, or sometimes also known as spaced practice. The gist of it is that you divide the lesson into 3 different parts. You have input 1, where you sort of introduce an idea, and then you have input 2 and 3, where you repeat the same ideas but in different ways. In between them, you have then brief breaks between 5 to 10 minutes. The optimal time is 10 minutes, where you would then have your students take a break of what you've taught them, and then you repeat the core ideas over time. Interestingly enough, we can also see here in the next part then that there have been studies made which have asked people how they think that they learned the best, and many people do believe that this sort of massed practice then, where you listen to an extensive and crammed sort of lecture would be the best way. But then actually when looking at the results, where there have been tests made over time, we can see that the other aspect than the spaced learning way of doing things has higher results when it comes to retention and results at tests. To put this into context, I've added some examples here. Maybe you would then have a PowerPoint presentation, and then perhaps you could have a Kahoot at the end of the lesson. Whereas if we look at spaced learning, we can see that we can begin with a lecture. In this case, I just took Google Slides as an example, and then we could use other sort of tools to improve then and to repeat the ideas that we have learned. Here we have Quizlet, one of the various then tools we could use, and then finally we can also have a brief then exam using exam.net. Other studies have also shown that this is an excellent way that you could also build upon it if you have this sort of core structure, by not only then introducing a topic and then simply repeating it, but you can also go deeper. If you look at this example here, we can see that we have the introduction with the lecture, and then you would have, let's say, a worksheet where you would recall the initial information, and then you would end the third part with application, sort of building then complexity, but also adding agency, where students not only simply repeat, but they also use the knowledge at the end of the lesson. And then if we zoom out, there's another idea here that you can connect this over time, since some students might find this to be a little bit too fragmented for them. But the idea then is you could connect lessons where the first step of the second lesson here then connects to the final step of the first lesson, meaning that you can make a connection back in time to reinforce ideas and build upon them. And then finally, here's an example of how I've used it in my classroom. So in this case, we can take a module where I teach my English students about speech patterns and how to create a motivational speech using Monroe's motivated sequence, where I, for example, would then begin with a lecture on how Monroe's motivated sequence works and also the 5 steps, and then we would have a worksheet where they recall the parts of them, and then finally they would use those 5 steps in an example speech that they would create themselves. As I've mentioned, sometimes students have given me feedback that they might find this a little bit too chopped up for their tastes, but there are also other students who might feel otherwise. Here's a quote from one of my latest evaluations where a student said this, and I quote, "You're actually the best teacher ever, and for many reasons. You always have your lessons online so we can go and check. You give us many different things to work with, and it's not always the same thing, so it doesn't get boring. You always have good intros so we know what to do. You talk to every student individually, so I think that makes them feel seen and heard, which is great. You give us fun activities, and I genuinely think every student here loves you." Now, I don't want to share that student quote simply just to pat my own back, but rather to show that there are students who quite enjoy this. It adds variation, it creates depth, but also it gives them an idea of what's to come, since lessons will have the essentially same structure over time. It helps me a lot as a teacher to improve my lessons. It gives me a bit of a better grip of what to do, since I know that it's evidence-based, but also that it gives me a sort of an idea of how I can go deeper and help students to improve their craft, but also to improve their retention over time. So to summarize, in this video, I've talked about some of the issues that I've experienced myself with sort of long lectures and how it can be hard to keep focus, but also as a teacher that I've been not really quite aware of the ways that we can use evidence-based strategies in my classroom. And then when I came across then spaced learning, it improved my way of teaching, but it also has a rigorous amount of research backing up that it improves retention and that students find this sort of variation stimulating. We talked a bit about how we can use this as a means of splitting a lesson into 3 parts, where we then use short breaks in between. Sometimes it's great to sort of give them an extra depth by not only then repeating what's been mentioned, but also going deeper by adding application at the end. Now, thank you for watching this video. If you find it interesting, you can message me or let me know by giving it a thumbs up or leaving a friendly comment in the comment section below. If there are other teachers that you think might find this interesting, please feel free to share the video with them, and also please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps it grow and it appeases the algorithm gods, making sure that others might find this video as well. Now, if you want to follow me, you can always find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, and so on. And I'm always excited to hear from you. So if you comment, you make sure that I have a look at it from now and then, and I will have a response for you. Now, thank you once again for watching the Didactic Laboratory, and we'll see each other in the next video.